Between 18 and 21 June 2018, we are having our summer auctions at the auction house Künker in Osnabrück. At auction 308 on 19 June, another part of the Popken collection will be auctioned off. This time, we present to you the coins of the House of Welf. Do you feel a little uncertain when it comes to the various branches of the House of Welf, like most numismatists? Of course, you know that the House of Welf reigned over the Duchy of Brunswick and Lüneburg. But when it comes to knowing the different lines and which one succeeded which at one point in history and for what reason, even the most cunning expert may very well struggle. But don't worry, after watching this film, you will fare much better. We are sorting the different Welf lines in the 16th and 17th century for you, illustrating the whole with the marvelous coins from the Popken collection. Let's start with Henry the Lion. He brought us beautiful bracteates, showing the animal of the House of Welf's cunning arms, the German Welpe, the offspring of a particularly fine dog, or, as depicted on the bracteates, a lion. The territory over which Henry ruled was called Saxony. When Henry's grandson Otto the Child was enfeoffed in 1235 with parts of his grandfather's tenure by Emperor Frederick II, the new Duchy of Brunswick was created out of the territories Brunswick and Lüneburg. That is why on this bracteate Otto calls himself Otto, Duke of Brunswick. We are now going to jump to the beginning of the early modern era. Since around 1525, mining in the Harz Mountains had become profitable, and the silver to be mined there made a great object of dispute. Because in 1525 there were already 4 Brunswick lines. 4 after the death of Otto the Child in 1252, his duchy had been divided into Brunswick-Wolfenbüttel and Brunswick-Lüneburg. Above all, keep these 2 lines in mind, Brunswick-Wolfenbüttel and Brunswick-Lüneburg. In 1291, during another partition of Brunswick-Lüneburg, the Principality of Brunswick-Grubenhagen was split off, and in 1495, Eric I founded the Kahlenberg line with Kahlenberg and Göttingen. Let's go over that again. In 1555, it is the year of the Peace of Augsburg, Henry the Younger ruled over Brunswick-Wolfenbüttel, Ernest V over Brunswick-Grubenhagen, Eric the Younger over Brunswick-Kahlenberg, and Francis Otto over Brunswick-Lüneburg. Why is there no coin of Francis Otto? Simple. Brunswick-Lüneburg did not have a share in the hard silver and therefore wasn't able to mint coins on a large scale. And the fact that Brunswick-Wolfenbüttel almost lost his share during the Smalkaldic War is commemorated by this coin. On the back, it shows a man from the wilderness, what the Germans call wilder Mann. And wilder Mann was the name of the most important mine on the Rummelsberg mountain, under the control of the Duke of Brunswick-Wolfenbüttel. Translated into more or less modern language, the backside legend reads, "In God's power have I placed my concern. He has disposed, and this will be sufficient for me." Henry the Younger thus hints at the happy ending of his war against Goslar about the Rummelsberg silver. The people of Brunswick and Goslar had fought together against Duke Henry, cast him out of his own duchy and even incarcerated him for several years. It wasn't until after Charles V's victory at the Battle of Mühlberg that Henry was freed and got back his silver mines, which is precisely what this thaler celebrates. By the way, Henry the Younger is responsible for the relations of the Brunswick-Wolfenbüttel line being relatively lucid. That is because he introduced primogeniture, meaning that this line's heir was always the oldest male descendant. First, Julius, then Henry Julius, and last, Frederick Ulrich. The latter was probably among the richest princes of the German Empire. He had enough silver to pay for a large army. And when, in 1596, the last ruler from the line of Brunswick-Grubenhagen died, Frederick Ulrich conquered his territory in order to add the silver mines of the Grubenhagen line to his property. Naturally, the ruling prince of Brunswick-Lüneburg did not like that. Christian fought back. He filed suit at the court of the Holy Roman Empire, won his case, and Frederick Ulrich was forced to hand over the Grubenhagen territory to the line of Brunswick-Lüneburg. Only since then was the coinage of Brunswick-Lüneburg as extensive as that of Brunswick-Wolfenbüttel. Attention! Since 1433 the Dukes of Brunswick-Lüneburg resided in the town of Celle. That is why this line is normally called Brunswick-Lüneburg-Celle. So at the beginning of the 30 Years' War, Christian ruled over Brunswick-Lüneburg-Celle. Frederick Ulrich over Brunswick-Wolfenbüttel. Augustus the Younger in the Brunswick-Lüneburg territory of Hitzacker, his older brother Julius Ernest in Brunswick-Dannenberg, and William in Brunswick-Harburg. Hold on. Hitzacker, Dannenberg, Harburg. What's the deal with those now? Let's take a closer look. The tiny territory of Harburg is named after the castle of the same name. It was split off from Brunswick-Lüneburg in 1527 in order to pay off a younger son. It would not be worth mentioning being reintegrated into Brunswick-Lüneburg as soon as 1642, was it not of numismatic relevance. William of Brunswick-Harburg, whose magnificent thaler we see here, received, during the Welf inheritance partition of 1635, the rich county of Hoya, providing him with enough funds to initiate extensive minting. And now we've come across the keyword, the Welf inheritance partition of 1635. This is something we need to keep in mind. With the Welf inheritance partition of 1635, the new house of Brunswick-Wolfenbüttel and of Brunswick-Lüneburg enters the genealogy. This Welf inheritance partition is the knot tying together the lines of Wolfenbüttel, Dannenberg, Hitzacker, Harburg, and Lüneburg. An inheritance partition always requires someone to have died. In this case, it was Frederick Ulrich of Brunswick-Wolfenbüttel who passed away in 1634. Now, who would inherit the large estate? There were enough candidates, but among those, only a few had sons. For in 1610, Ernest II of Brunswick-Lüneburg-Celle and his brothers had agreed on the following. For 5 brothers with many descendants, the country was too small. Therefore, only one of them was allowed to marry. The youngest brother, George, got permission to beget legitimate children in a marriage. The remaining brothers in turn succeeded one after the other, Ernest II as ruler of Brunswick-Lüneburg-Celle. For George and his offspring, the small barony of Brunswick-Kahlenberg-Hanover was created. it would later fall back to Brunswick-Lüneburg. Thus, George's descendants were one option. The second option were the sons of Henry of Brunswick-Dannenberg. In 1569 he had, to the benefit of his brother, renounced the rule of Brunswick-Lüneburg-Celle, and as compensation had received the small territory of Dannenberg, together with a written guarantee that his offspring would be allowed to succeed the Wolfenbüttel line should it come to an end. The older one of his two sons, Julius Ernest, had no son himself. His brother, though, Augustus the Younger, had quite the selection of sons. Before 1635 he had been living in the small territory of Hitzacker, which his brother Julius Ernest had given to him in return for August the Younger, leaving the rule over Dannenberg to him. During the Welf inheritance partition of 1635, it was agreed that this very Augustus the Younger should become the progenitor of the new house of Brunswick-Wolfenbüttel. After the death of his brother, Brunswick-Dannenberg also became part of his territory. And the descendants of George of Brunswick-Calenberg-Hanover inherited the line of Brunswick-Lüneburg-Celle and Brunswick-Calenberg-Hanover. For this territory, however, there was no primogeniture, so every change of rule was still heavily contested between the families. It wasn't until 1705 that Ernest August merged Brunswick-Lüneburg-Celle and Brunswick-Calenberg-Hanover. To prevent another fragmentation, he introduced primogeniture for the entire new realm. Ernest Augustus would become the primary figure in the history of the House of Welf. Not only was he appointed Prince-Elector, he also married Sophia of the Palatinate, thanks to whom his sons had inheritance claims to the English throne. But that's a different story. So, all clear now? Or do you agree that had the House of Welf introduced primogeniture a while earlier, today's numismatists would be spared quite a lot of confusion? We are happy to invite you to our 2018 summer auctions at the auction house Künker. For further questions, do not hesitate to contact us.